Look, firstly, isn't it, as you said, great to be in regional Victoria? I know you're a Bendigo born and bred, and I live in Geelong, and it's just nice to get out of Melbourne, isn't it? And yes, I know. You've managed to escape Spring Street, which is terrific. Look, thank you again for coming today. Keynote I thought was terrific, and you talked about those pillars, which I think would all kind of agree with the need to have good public service, a strong economy, diverse. One of the things I think is really terrific is also the announcement of the $3 million that you put in, and I think that's a great victory, an early victory for the Bush Summit and see the people of regional Victoria. So well done on that. I guess we all watched the Matildas last night, and how are we feeling?
Oh, we're a little sad.
We are, aren't we? I know.
I think it's important, and we talked about this earlier, and indeed I said this to my 11-year-old daughter when I spoke to her this morning, who was still feeling a little sad. I said, 4 weeks ago, if we'd said that they'd be playing off for third, we would have taken that in spades. They've been such an amazing team to watch and be inspired by, and the legacy benefits not just for the sport, but for watching sport be celebrated for both men and women that's a great legacy that they've delivered for the country.
It really is, and we love our sport obviously out in regional Victoria. Now I've got to ask you a question to get things going, Deputy Premier. Obviously we all had pretty high hopes for the Commonwealth Games. You know, Geelong and also your hometown and Ballarat. It was a big decision, obviously a huge decision, as the Premier said at the time. I think we all felt a little bit let down. We thought there'd be a big chance to energise regional Victoria. It was a big plan. Just take us through, if you could, why you made that decision. And also the other question I think some of us might have is the budget appeared to blow out by a significant amount of money. What happened, and what's the way forward after that?
Yeah, no, thanks, Nick. Look, and I understand that disappointment well, and I've spoken to many in my community and across the state. But when we sat back and had a good long look at the numbers that were coming in terms of not just the costs for the infrastructure that's associated with the games, but also the cost of running a 12-day event, a lot of operational costs that are just for that 12 days. That $6 to $7 billion range for that 12-day event we just thought it just didn't stack up, particularly when it sat against that initial economic estimated benefit of $3 billion. To spend more than twice as much to get half the economic benefit, it just didn't stack up. And we also went back to the reason why we agreed for regional Victoria to host the Games in the first place. And that was because we wanted to hold on to those legacy benefits. I mentioned housing in my contribution earlier, as did the Mayor. The investment in community sporting infrastructure, in tourism and major events. And that's why we have held on to that $2 billion, invested it in $1 billion in regional housing, in community sporting infrastructure, and importantly 2 programs, and tourism and major events sector. And I know a few months ago I was speaking with the Mayor of Woodonga, I hope Ron doesn't mind me saying this, and at the time he made an observation about how the Commonwealth Games, he couldn't, there were communities like Wodonga that had hoped for, how could they be part of the Games, which obviously they weren't part of the host city arrangements. Well, as part of this fund, they will get support through this fund because it'll go to all of regional Victoria. So we've held on to those key legacy outcomes for all of regional Victoria that were the key reason behind agreeing to host the Games in the first place. But really, the costs just didn't stack up when we had a good long look at it.
Yeah, and some of that money obviously will hopefully go towards housing and looking at what we can do. You mentioned housing in your keynote, and I think it's going to be a theme we explore a fair bit today. We've got a big shortage of housing in regional Victoria. I saw a figure suggesting we need 9,000 new homes built every year in regional Victoria. We had the Prime Minister make his announcement with the Premiers yesterday about 1.2 million houses. Certainly, if we can't get the housing right, we're going to struggle to get people to live out here and also to work out here. I mean, we've seen with a piece in the paper during the week, the businesses are having to find accommodation to get their workers. When are we going to see some of those real benefits out here? And can you give us the insight as to what comes out of yesterday's announcement as well for regional Victoria?
Yeah, so yesterday's announcement, it's great to have a federal government sitting down with the states and tackling the big issues in a not in a confrontational way. We had 9 years of that. That's the only political comment I'll make on that. It's great that we can sit down and see that cooperative approach with state and territory and federal governments, because we do need all levels of government to be working together on this. And there's obviously additional funding that is put on the table from the federal government, but also funding that comes with a reform agenda and driving reform with the states, which is about unlocking some of those barriers that both state and local governments are responsible for in terms of making their approval systems better. But I did want to pick up, Nick, on your observation around how housing is an economic constraint as well. It is absolutely, and we have to continue to invest more in public and social and affordable housing, and that's what we're doing through our big build, through our regional housing fund, which again I mentioned earlier. But it is also an economic constraint as well. And I know of a business in the western part of Victoria who's bought the local pub so that they can have somewhere where their workers can stay, because being able to have a workforce to find a place to live in the town close to the business, they couldn't find anything because it was a supply issue. It's both a supply issue and affordability issue. Talk to any of the communities in tourism areas, whether it's here in the high country or down on the coast. They too have challenges in getting having hospitality workers being able to find a place to live. So it's an important social and community issue that we need to address. It's also an important economic issue for businesses to address, and that's why as part of that $2 billion fund I mentioned earlier in the context of the Commonwealth Games, there's $150 million for a regional work accommodation fund to partner with regional businesses, to partner with private industry to build more accommodation for workforce. And there's the Maryborough District Hospital has through a different funding stream, we supported the construction of a 20-bed accommodation centre attached to the Maryborough Hospital. So they can not only have the nursing students come through, but also the allied health students who come on rotation. And of course, if they come through on rotation, they've got a place to live, they settle into the community, they might even fall in love with someone and stay, which is a big driver of how we also support people to live and work and stay in regional Victoria.
Yeah, we want them to stay. It's not just about coming up for a short period of time. I'm just watching the clock. We've got 3 minutes left, so I'm going to have to be a little bit quicker with my questions, which is disappointing, but we have to get through it. I wanted to ask you, you've got the big housing statement coming up at some point as a government. There's been conjecture that there might be an opportunity for state government more directly involved in planning and perhaps looking at what that means for councils. Are we going to see, do you think, more involvement from state government in fast-tracking planning to allow us to get that housing a bit quicker?
Look, Nick, I'm sure you'll appreciate why I can't, there's no details to announce today, but we are looking at all of the constraints that slow down or constrict supply, and some of that sits on the market side in terms of what are some of the challenges around resources and labour shortages on the private side, but there is also that obligation on us to look at what are all the tools that the state government has at its disposal, legislative, regulatory decision making, and what do we need to do to make them more efficient, make them faster, but also too, and again, I was listening very keenly to the Mayor earlier in his presentation. He also talked about these issues around what do local government and state government, who do have the primary planning decision-making roles, how do we need to improve our practice? And so we will be working also with local councils about how we need to support each other to make these decisions in a timely way. And it's not about rushing. It's not about making decisions on the fly and ticking boxes for inappropriate projects. It's about moving more efficiently through the decision-making and how we can address that supply issue.
Great. The other issue on everyone's agenda, I think, is transport roads. We've had issues with the flooding, as you remember. Rochester hard hit, a lot of the issues with the Melbourne Highway. We had a report in the Herald Sun during the week suggesting there were some challenges with $130 million or $120 million being cut from road surfacing, and how that might have impacted the roads. Are you having a bit of a crack at the roads? Is there more we can do out there to fix them?
Oh, look, as someone who drives on regional roads every day, and my community was also significantly flood affected by the October floods, which just smashed through great swathes of particularly around central and northern Victoria. We do have a lot of work to do in terms of repairing those flood affected roads, and part of the challenge too is the potholes keep opening up as the weather dries out. Then you have another downfall, the potholes keep opening up. So that's why there is a lot of investment that we've made to date. There hasn't been funding cuts. There's been investment. We made an immediate injection of $165 million to go out there and quickly fix as many potholes as we could. As in terms of that immediate flood response, there's been funding in the budget of $2.8 billion to put in place a 10-year program, because it's not just the immediate issues. It's also making sure that we have a systematic program of identification and a program to get out there and fix both the potholes, the shoulders of the roads, and then there's also the broader road upgrades. Absolutely, it is a big challenge for us. We're continuing to make those investments because it is so important, because they're a big part of regional communities. Yeah,
they are. They really are. Look, I'd love to have another 15 minutes. There's so much I'd love to chat to you about. There's one final question. This is our first Bush Summit, and terrific to have you out as a Deputy Premier. Is there any chance next year you'll be out here as the Premier of Victoria? Is there a handover coming, Deputy Premier? What's the plan?
Nice try, Nick. No, I have absolutely the job I want and love. I love the job that I have. I feel blessed, really, really blessed. It's I think every member of Parliament agree it's an honour to represent your local community. It's a privilege to be a minister. Daniel is doing a fabulous job. He's staying there. I'm delighted with the job I've got. I've got the job that I want, and we keep working very hard. People can gossip and chatter. We've just got a lot to do. Like we've talked about climate change, housing, roads. We've got a bit of transport to build. We've got a busy and big agenda, and that's what we're focused on.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Premier.